episode of Blue Jays Buzz. Here with you today, we have Drew, and no Gru.
Not Gru.
Because Gru is busy doing something else right now. So it is just Drew and Gru here with you today. There are 3 things on the agenda. Well, kind of 4 things for us to discuss today. First, we got the Bellinger deal.
Yep.
And we'll talk about whether or not Boris took an L there. We'll talk about the new uniforms, which are quite a story if you haven't heard of them.
You see people's nuts.
Yeah, and then we're also going to talk about the Manoah start. And Vladdy looks like he is in shape. Also, by the way, I think Alek Manoah's beard is really good. That is just what I'm saying. And I like his calm demeanor at the beginning of spring training. So, the first thing we need to discuss is the Cody Bellinger signing. And the reason we have to discuss this is because he was projected to get over $150 million and go on a long-term deal.
Yeah, 3 years.
Those were the original.
$80 million.
The deal is 3 years, $80 million, but it's a bit more complicated than just that. It is a front-loaded deal, which means in the first 2 years he'll make $30 million each, and in the last year he'll make $20 million. However, similar to the Carlos Correa deal we saw Scott Boras pull off a few years ago, it might have been I think it was 2 off seasons ago. It has an opt-out after year 1 and an opt-out after year 2, which means if Cody Bellinger has another good season, he can go back out to the free agent market after this year and still get a really good deal.
He could get his $30 million and then dip.
Yeah, he could. He could.
I don't know if he will, but
So what do you think of the Boris deal, Drew?
I'm very surprised that it's $80 million, right? He was expected to go 100 plus. And we were talking about, so how much did Matt Chapman want, do you think?
I think he's looking for a 5-year, $100 million deal.
Yeah, so that's the thing that, kind of makes me go insane. Cody Bellinger is better than Matt Chapman.
Matt Chapman's more predictable.
I still just don't, it's Cody Bellinger.
Exactly. It's Cody Bellinger. This is the guy who's only had 1 good year in his last 3.
I don't know. I just thought it would be higher.
I'm happy that the Blue Jays didn't take a risk on him, to be honest. We actually have a full episode called "Whether is Cody Worth the Risk?"
Yeah.
You can check that out on our YouTube channel or on Spotify, where I think we made that in December before we had signed anybody really. And we were saying how great it would be if the Blue Jays had managed to sign Bellinger.
He's an injury risk, though. Because earlier...
Earlier in his career, sure, he got injured.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's predictable enough. And that's what teams look at. And I think the Cubs, they played this out really, really nicely. Because
they waited.
Spent
not a lot of money on
it. And they got him on a good team-friendly deal, but it's also a player-friendly deal. And the Cubs, they were saying this on the Foul Territory podcast, with how big their market is, they don't spend as much as you might expect. And that's just something interesting about the Cubs, because the Cubs, they're a great team. They're set to be in the mix for Matt Chapman. I don't see that happening now that they've signed Bellinger. It's just a great deal for both player and agent. However, Boris was marketing Bellinger at $150+ million, and that's what he probably told Bellinger he was going to get. Now, I don't think anybody can really complain with getting guaranteed $80 million, because if you're complaining about that...
There's something wrong?
No, not necessarily that there's something wrong. It's just...
Not a lot of people
you must be really good.
Exactly. $1 in your bank account.
Not very many people have $80 million, that's for sure. And,
not even $2 million.
Anyways, I still think if you're a Major League Baseball player, even if you're a guy like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, you're still making $7.5 million a year, which for baseball is relatively small for a starter, but it's still a lot of money, and so yeah, I think Boris did take an L here because he thought he was gonna get a lot more money for this guy, and he didn't. And I think the Cubs, they just outplayed Scott Boras and Cody Bellinger, and they decided that it wasn't worth the risk to give him a 7-year deal. And I agree with that. I don't think it is worth the risk. Do you have anything else to say on the Bellinger move, Drew?
I don't, but I am itching, like, fiercely to talk about these MLB. It is terrible.
So MLB has introduced, for those who don't know, MLB has introduced a new Nike Vapor uniform, and not a lot of people are happy about it because they look very cheap.
Oh, they blurred it out in this.
They look very cheap, and they're
see-through.
They look quite cheap, and there's been rumored to be like see-through pants.
Not rumored.
Obviously, they're not. Obviously, they're not like completely see-through. But you just have to like search up MLB new uniforms, and there's gonna be a ton of articles about it, a ton of images,
pants, some testicles. You know what I mean? It's true.
There's
a giant.
They're not the best uniforms. Yeah, there's a picture of a giant player.
You can actually see his nuts.
Yeah, it's
the outline of them at least.
It is. They're new uniforms. It's a story. I honestly though, I think it's one of the things where
it matters.
No, it doesn't matter.
To me, it does.
It doesn't matter. Like it.
You don't want to
listen.
No, you're eating.
Let me speak.
Yeah.
It's like the thing that's new in spring training, and then everybody just gets used to it and accepts it. Like it's not a big deal.
What is this?
It's not. It's not a big deal, and people will get used to it, and they won't care.
I don't know.
They just won't care, and you can't blame them for that.
I just would feel uncomfortable.
You'd feel uncomfortable, like you're a Major League Baseball player, man.
But I don't know. This is weird. It's just weird.
It's weird, but like I said, people are gonna get used to it, and they're not gonna care. They might care, and it'll be like something at the beginning of the season, maybe in the first month, and then
these pictures are hilarious.
And then after that, it's not gonna be a big story because, quite frankly, it shouldn't be a big story. I don't think.
I'm gonna end up making this a big story. These are hilarious.
Well, you heard it here first on Blue Jays Buzz. You heard it here first. Okay. Anything else on that, Drew? Before we move on?
I think that's good. I think I've made my case pretty clear.
Okay. So just to summarize,
pretty clear. You get it? Pretty clear.
Just to summarize on the new uniforms.
Period.
They're a little bit see-through, and they're just. I think it's going to be a story that doesn't become that big of a deal once the season starts, because people will actually start to care about the season and not about like boring spring training stuff. But yeah. So now the last thing, or second last thing, we want to talk about on this episode of the podcast. I believe it's episode 9. We are approaching our 10th ever podcast episode. So thank you very much to everybody who has stuck with us the whole time. Thank you so much. And share the podcast with your friends.
Oh, please do.
Share the podcast. I can understand it's boring to watch on YouTube because you just see our logo the whole time.
Yeah.
But
Spotify's a great place to
listen to the podcast on Spotify, or just listen to it on YouTube, and then like watch the Blue Jays game as you're listening, or read the news or whatever or whatever you do. I like to think it's a great podcast. I do like to think it's a great podcast. I love the podcast.
I agree.
But anyways, enough about promoting our podcast to the people who are already interested in listening to it. Let's talk about Alek Manoah's start. So there's a few things I want to say before we get right into it.
Yeah.
In spring training, obviously it's the first time he's pitched since early August last year. He had a velo bump, which was good. He said that that's something that he felt much better about.
He also said that he was going to try and just
the higher velo.
Let me see them. He also was talking about how he wanted to just relax more and kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, go with the flow, but he's obviously everybody knows Alek Manoah. He's a competitive guy.
Oh yeah, very.
He does not like to lose. He does not like to get cut.
No.
But the Manoah start, he hit 3 batters. He let up 4 runs in 1 2/3 innings.
Walked a batter too.
Walked a batter. He gave up how many hits?
It was 3 hits.
3 hits and 4 earned runs, 1 walk, no strikeouts.
And his ERA is now a beautiful 21.60.
Yeah, so it's not a great ERA, but it's the first game of the spring.
And it's spring training.
And one thing I do want to mention though, this was the first Blue Jays spring training game that wasn't broadcast on Sportsnet or broadcast at all.
You think it was because of?
So I wonder if the Blue Jays are trying to hide something.
Well, is this like?
And also,
was it Manoah? That's what I'm wondering.
It could have just been a coincidence.
It might have, but.
But I'm happy. I'm happy it wasn't broadcast. Not because I don't want to watch Blue Jays games. I love watching Blue Jays games, but I can't anyway because they're all like 1:00. And it's because I feel like people would have made a much bigger deal out of it if they had actually seen it. So like right now, I don't think it's a big deal. And I'm happy that they didn't broadcast it. I think it was just a coincidence, but we'll never know. Yeah. So, what do you think about that Manoah start? And if we see something like this again, do you think it's a red flag for the Blue Jays?
So, I mean, it's early, right? It was his first start of spring training, right? So it's not that big of a deal. Obviously, it matters a little bit, right? Because you want to improve and learn from your mistakes. Also, I think it was good for the Jays to see what he would play like after not pitching in a professional scenario for August. What was it?
It was August 10th or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's good ways to think about it and bad ways. But I think overall, he wasn't. I'm just happy that he wasn't terribly annoyed about his start.
Yeah, in a press conference after, I'm just happy that he's taken away the positives. Because last year, he started to beat up on himself. Not that he shouldn't have. He didn't have a great year last year.
No.
But it certainly doesn't help him.
No.
Right? And the Blue Jays, they have incredible resources up and down the organization to help him get better. And I'm excited to see what this season holds for him. Because I think this can definitely be a great bounce back year for the for Alek Manoah, and I'm excited to see what the season has in store for Manoah this year. Your thoughts, Drew?
I'm also very interested because I mean I like Manoah. Right? He's a good guy. He's a great personality. Very competitive, and we like that. But I think the Jays should pace themselves before putting him in any bad situations, because I don't want him to go into a spiral.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be their opening day starter. That's for sure.
No, that is for
One
sure.
last thing, they mentioned this on the Blair and Barker podcast, and I think it's an important point. He is their 5th starter this year, which means that people can't talk about him or treat him like a number one, like they treated him last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the expectations should be different. They are different.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Last thing before we close off, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is in shape. He is hitting the ball hard. He is running well. He's projected to hit 36 home runs this year, which is what we want to see from Vladdy.
Last year, I'm not going to get my hopes up, because last year, his expected stats were very good.
His expected stats were like 30 home runs last year. He didn't obviously get that. He hit 26. Exactly. But it wasn't... There's a lot of players who would be dying to have Vladdy's season last year. But I'm excited.
It was bad in a Vladdy.
It was bad for his expectations. But it still wasn't a bad season by any means. He is very, very fit this year. He's lost a lot of weight. I assume he's used the Blue Jays resources to help him with that. It's a great organization. So Vladdy and Manoah have lost weight. Kirk hasn't really changed. Kirk is still the same player. He's still a great baseball player though.
Yep.
I think he hit the Blue Jays' first spring training home run.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and then there's also a guy named Brian Servin. He's we claimed him off waivers. I don't think he's in the lineup today, but yeah. So, any thoughts on the Vladdy situation, Drew?
I mean, it's great that he's gotten into shape, right? I mean, there isn't really much else.
Awesome. So that is today. Share the podcast with your friends. Like the video. Follow us on Spotify. Download the podcast. Like the podcast. Add it to your episodes. Whatever.
Do everything.
Yeah, do everything to promote the podcast.
The podcast episode.
We really appreciate it. But this is Frew and Drew signing off with you. Blue Jays Buzz. We're out.